Honor, may I proceed? Thank you. May it please the court. My name is Dylan Gould. Ladies and gentlemen, Homer Simpson is a man who does not pay his debts. Instead, as you will learn, he acts with complete irresponsibility, causing great expense to those in his path. Now, this all started when Mr. Simpson purchased a car, but he decided not to pay for that car. So the company that sold it to him, Lone Star Auto Sales, acted within their rights when they came onto his property and they tried to take that car back. But when they did this, Mr. Simpson shot and killed Dakota Smith, an employee of Lone Star Auto Sales who was there to do his job, to take the car back, to repossess it. And when Mr. Simpson shot and killed Dakota, he created a new debt, a much, much larger debt, one that cannot be repaid by any amount of money. Now, like I said, this started when he purchased a car. And in the contract for that car, which you will see with your own eyes, it states that if he missed his car payments for more than 3 months, that Lone Star would come onto his property and they would take the car back. Now, the contract also stated that Lone Star would keep a spare set of car keys in case they ever needed to do that. And I want you to pay attention to those two facts. They may be some of the most important facts that you hear during this trial. They are undisputed. Mr. Simpson cannot change what is right there on paper. Lone Star had the means to take the car, they had the keys, and Mr. Simpson had notice. He knew that they would take the car back if he didn't pay. Now, one of the most important witnesses that you're going to hear from in this trial is Mr. Sidney Lloyd. Mr. Lloyd is the owner and operator of Lone Star Auto Sales. He is so important because he is the only non-party witness who's actually there that night. He's the only one, other than Mr. Simpson, who can actually tell you what happened that night. Now, he will tell you that when Mr. Simpson began to miss his car payments, Mr. Lloyd tried to work with him. He tried to notify him of this delinquency. He called his home. Mr. Simpson wouldn't talk to him. He sent letters to his home. No response. And he visited his home. And you will see all of these right there on the business log that we intend to introduce into evidence that Mr. Lloyd regularly kept. You will see on that log each attempt to contact Mr. Simpson, each phone call, each letter, and you will actually be able to see these letters because we have copies of these letters here today. All of them stating that Mr. Simpson was late, and the last two stating that if he didn't pay, that Lone Star would come and take the car back. And you will see the visits to the home that I mentioned earlier. You will see that each time that Mr. Lloyd came to Mr. Simpson's home, no one would come to the door to speak to him until the last time. Because on the last time, on August 10th, Mr. Lloyd traveled to the Simpsons' home one last time to notify him of the delinquency. And with him was Dakota Smith. He will tell you Dakota was his best repossession man. And they went there to notify Mr. Simpson one more time of the delinquency. But when they got there, and they got onto his property, they spoke with him, and they notified him again. They told him that he needed to pay, or that they would come and take the car back. Now, as Mr. Lloyd will tell you, instead of trying to work with them, instead of offering to give the car back, paying the money, or even offering to pay the money in the future, Mr. Simpson threatened them. He threatened them with violence. He said, if you come back onto my property, somebody is going to get hurt. So they left. Mr. Lloyd will tell you they left. They didn't take the car then because they didn't want to breach the peace. But they left and they did exactly what they said they would do. They came back 3 days later on August 13th, in the early morning hours of August 13th. Mr. Lloyd will tell you that he traveled to pick up Dakota. He picked up Dakota and they went to the Simpson residence. And when they got there, he parked about a half a block down the street. He'll tell you that it was Dakota's job to go and take the car. So Mr. Lloyd gave Dakota the car keys, the same car keys that they were allowed to keep in the contract. And Dakota set out to take the car. He went to take the car, but when he got there, and he opened the door, which Mr. Lloyd could see, Mr. Simpson came out of the home. And Mr. Simpson was armed with a .357 Magnum revolver, a very powerful gun. And he pointed that gun at Dakota. And Mr. Lloyd will tell you that Dakota put his hands up. But that it didn't matter. Because Mr. Simpson did shoot Dakota. Not once, but 2 times. Dakota fell. Mr. Simpson, as you will learn, used to be a fireman. But when Dakota fell, he didn't try to help Dakota. He didn't perform CPR or any life-saving measure on him that he must have known. He instead retreated back into his home. And then Mr. Lloyd saw him come out a few minutes later, walk over to Dakota's body, and retreat back to his home one last time. And he stayed in that home, and he didn't come out again. And you will hear from Officer LeDuc. Officer LeDuc is another very important witness. She is so important because she was the first police officer to arrive on the scene that night. She was the first one to actually try and help Dakota. She will tell you that she performed CPR on him. But it didn't matter, because at that point, Dakota had died. She will tell you that Mr. Simpson would not come out of his home, even though the police were there. Even though he claimed he was innocent, he would not come out of his home until they had to order him out of the home with a bullhorn. And when Mr. Simpson finally came out of his home, stepped out of the doorway, Officer LeDuc asked if she could search the home. Mr. Simpson, as she will tell you, would not let the police into his home to search it. But what they were able to see, right there on the ground, was a gun. The same .357 Magnum revolver that was used to kill Dakota Smith. And next to that gun, right there on the ground, was a screwdriver. And near the screwdriver and the gun, just a few feet away, was a toolbox. An open toolbox. And in that toolbox was the same exact brand of screwdriver as the one that was next to the gun. The same exact brand. The same color, model, make, everything. Now, despite this, Mr. Simpson has claimed that Dakota was using that screwdriver as a weapon. He claimed that he didn't simply take that screwdriver out of the toolbox and place it next to the gun as evidence, that Dakota attacked him. But as you will see, that just doesn't add up. When you see the evidence in the testimony, you will see that that is just not true. And that is why at the end of this trial, my co-counsel, Vishal Nodiswala, will come to you, and he will ask that you finally hold Mr. Simpson accountable for the harm that he has caused, that you finally make him pay for this debt that he has created, and that in doing so, that we finally give justice to Dakota, to his wife, and his son, who no longer have a father and a husband to support them, to take care of them.